This is episode 19, and I'm your host, Maeve Langford, along with my co-host, Gary Benoit, the famous Gary, who's with us after 25 years of service as a first responder, 25 years as a cop, and now coach, speaker, author of the beautiful book, A Call to Service.
Thank you.
So we are here with you today on a whole new topic. But first of all, we want to share some news. So, Gary,
Yeah,
I'm going to let you share the news
sure.
as our statistician maestro around the podcast.
It's great. We're in this place. We're celebrating today a top 10 ranking in the country of Ireland for self-improvement podcasts. And it's just such it's a cool place to be. And it feels really good to see that number, to see that be in that ranking. But really, truthfully, where my thanks go is to all the listeners. This is really due in part to you guys continuing to tune into what we're doing. It gives us great feedback that you're tuning in and you're listening to what we have to say, and hopefully to getting a bunch of stuff out of this. Hopefully, we're giving you enough tools to you can just really drive this for your life and improve your life. But it's just such a cool thing. So thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for listening to what we have to say and just engaging with us in that way. And that's such a special moment for us. And we share that with you, the listener, because without you, we wouldn't be in that position. So
There's no
thank you.
point.
No,
Exactly. Exactly. And I'm going to up the stakes here now, Gary. I said to you that
yes,
we need to get a bit of competition going
sure.
between us and Canada. And I know population wise, like there's a huge difference. But for every one of you listening today from Canada, I'm going to invite you to share and post and
Hmm.
get family and friends on board, assuming that you're enjoying what you're hearing.
Correct.
And let's just see if we can catch up.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, we'd love to be same status in Canada. That'd be really cool.
For sure.
But it's just like I say, it's just a cool place to be. And once again, thank you so much for joining in. And we really enjoying this. We're loving this part of it. I really do enjoy this with you guys, and it's become um, a moment of there's pride there, and plus it's excitement for me to be here, and I love this collaboration. So this is the really cool thing. It's really cool. I love it.
Absolutely, me too.
Awesome.
So today's topic, and we think about this, so we're always open to suggestions. But today's topic is one. The word is inversion. Okay, so it actually comes from an old Greek tactic. The Stoics used to kind of visualize negative outcomes so that they could have a plan and a strategy for kind of overcoming them or subverting them or having a way through. So in our work here together and on the podcast, we don't often talk about focusing on the negative in any way, and this is not about focusing on the negative and going down a rabbit hole of what if it all
Right.
goes wrong and what if I fail and what if people don't like me or support me or any of that kind of thinking. But it is about that capacity to say, I'm whether it's a new diet or a new relationship or a new business venture or a new holiday destination, and if you've got some concerns about how successful it's going to be by whatever measure you bring to that, then one of the things that you can do is to just say to yourself, well, if this was to go horribly wrong, what are all the ways it could go horribly wrong, and how would I deal with that if it were to happen?
Hmm.
And it's a way of kind of preempting um challenge and being able to turn it on its head so that we can actually turn it into a positive outcome no matter
Hmm.
what.
It's a really cool concept. Um, and the idea of that, because we're not looking at pre-paving all the stuff that could go wrong, and we're not looking to pre-pave that piece of it. Like we're not looking to pre-pave, okay, I'm going on this road and this is what's going to happen, and we pre-pave the disaster that could be. But truthfully, what it is it's just looking at those things and saying, well, what's the worst thing that could happen here, and how would I handle this situation in this moment,
Yeah.
coming from my vision. So if I'm thinking about my vision and thinking about where I want to be, we all know that that's never always a smooth ride, right? Like you start something new, you do something new. Um, we we don't do this linearly. There's a lot of twists and turns, ups and downs as you go through, and you're building your dreams and you're building the life you want to live. So knowing that, it's not going to be perfect. This is a
Yeah.
great way to almost prepare for those moments that are going to come up, and instead of biting you in the butt, you sort of half-ass prepared for this moment where someone says something like, you had a great example, right? You said, well, I was, giving up, I decided to give up alcohol, which is a can be a real challenge for a lot of people, right? And
Yeah,
and
it was.
and whether you were, like, really, because it becomes such a socially acceptable part of life, right? You go out, you have a beer, you have this, you have that. If you're going to give that up, and there's going to be moments when people are like, well, you want a beer, you want a drink. And so if you didn't pre-pave
Handling those
the
moments.
objection to that,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Would you have stuck to it? Or,
Well, I think
would you have been, would you have, it would have been more rocky if you hadn't had
it's
pre-pavement?
harder.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So like again, I said this was from the Stoics and the ancient Greeks, but I mean it's been picked up and recommended by others. And Mark Waldman is a neuroscientist in the States, and he talks about the if-then strategy. So if I'm on a new diet, or I'm in a new job, and I'm worried about something happening. So if we go back to the alcohol scenario, that I'm at a party or a barbecue, and everybody's drinking, or lots of people are drinking, and they're offering it to me, the host or the hostess is offering it to me, as they will. I mean, and that's a
Hmm.
nice thing that they're doing that. And I have a plan that if that happens, that I'm being encouraged to have a drink, then I will say no, thank you. I've brought some alternatives, some
Hmm.
alcohol free alternatives, or no, thank you, I would just like water or tea or coffee, whatever it is. And I have that plan in place. And what Waldman brings to the scenario is that if we have preempted that, if we have made a plan or a strategy for it, that we're far more likely to implement that strategy than if we're
Correct.
kind of caught off guard, or
Right.
didn't anticipate it, and then we're more likely to default to the habit, the
Right.
original
Yeah.
habit.
Especially if you're shaky already, right? Like, it's whenever we start
Yeah.
a new dream or a new goal or a new vision, it's never that solid.
Yeah,
Especially on the
exactly.
beginning, you feel like you're kind of walking, and it's like, oh, it's, I don't know. And we can use all the strategy we've used here, but this is a good piece where, I think, we can easily find fault in our own idea, right? We can figure out, well, this could be go horribly wrong in this way, because it's easy for us, right, to do that
Hmm.
as a
Just, yeah,
society, and right,
catastrophize
right,
and
easy, right. So if we
yeah,
can just shine the light of awareness around that piece of it and create a more empowered strategy,
yeah,
to combat that, then really you're creating a better, more momentum in that, solidifying what you're visualizing for your life, essentially, right? And I
exactly.
think that a light of awareness, I mean, we talked about awareness before. It's a main topic of what we talk about, right?
For sure.
We want to make sure we're aware of all of the paradigms, because it's going to come up as a paradigm ultimately. Some of these are going to be paradigms, and so that's great to have that awareness, because if you don't have the awareness around those things as being potential obstacles, it's hard to navigate when they do come up, because maybe you didn't see it
Yeah.
coming.
Yeah, exactly. It's a way of kind of seeing it coming so that
Hmm.
you can be prepared for it and have a
Hmm.
plan for it. And I think James Clear, we've probably mentioned him before. He's the
Hmm.
author of Atomic Habits, but he says that successful business people in particular, that they kind of try to shine the light on mistakes that people have made in similar business, for example, so that they can avoid those mistakes. So again, it's not to build ourselves up with full of fear about how these things could happen to us, but it's to kind of say that this could happen, and in those scenarios, these are the ways to overcome them, or this is how I could avoid it or get ahead of it in some way, and make sure I come out on top.
So if you were to apply this practically, like I say, if there's a practical example you could lay out, what would be the process? Like, what would be the things that you would be doing, um, knowing that we're not looking to, like I say, crawl into this rabbit hole of despair,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
but we're looking to potentially navigate some of the rocks that come up in the sailing venture of this dream.
Sure.
what
So
would you do?
I think I've got a really good example actually that's kind
Yeah.
of tangible and people will be able to relate to. And that is sometimes I do interview prep with clients who are going for a promotional role or a new job. And one of the things that I ask them is like, what is the question that you're dreading that interview panel is going to ask you? And I said, because, the fact that you're giving energy to dreading that question, makes it even more
Mm,
inevitable that it's going to come up.
fair.
So our plan is not to put energy into hoping and wishing that it's not going to happen, but to actually nail your response to that. We're going to assume it's going to come up and you are going to have a brilliant response to it so that when it does arise, you're not derailed, you're not flummoxed. You actually feel really proud of yourself that you anticipated this and you've got a rock solid response to it. So it would be similar whether it's relating to a diet or a relationship issue or a moving house or like what's the thing you're really dreading that could go wrong. And let's assume you're having to deal with that. And what is the best possible outcome here? And how can
Right.
you prepare yourself to deal with it or to avoid it? I mean,
Right.
sometimes what our coach says, when you're worrying about something, she says to ask yourself, like, do I want this to happen? No. Is there anything I can do to avoid it happening?
Hmm.
So what can you do, to get ahead of it, to preempt, to close it down so that it's not part of your
Hmm.
experience? And worst case scenario, if it does arise, how can you make sure you handle it as best as
Right.
possible?
And really, truthfully, that's great points. It's all around your thinking, right?
Yeah,
It comes back to
always.
it, right? Comes
Yeah,
back to your thinking, right? Like, and I think, when you really consider what that means, with your thoughts, right? All of our thoughts are, subconsciously, we also have thoughts, right? We have our subconscious mind is always running. It's running a film reel essentially in our mind from all of the experiences we've received. And it kind of dictates a little bit of how much we allow in and how much good we can have and all that stuff. And that's the whole idea here. We're trying to like shine the awareness around your thinking and being able to change that piece of it.
exactly.
But ultimately, it's like, what's the worst that could happen? Like, what is like? I've asked that question lots. If you're venturing down a road and let's say it's a new business venture, my thought goes to, well, what's the worst that could happen if I go here and I fail? Did I actually fail? Did I just learn a bunch of stuff?
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Right? And
Yeah.
then knowing that these things are going to happen, I'm going to learn,
Exactly.
right? And
Exactly. And I think sometimes, the nervous system, if we're kind of, so we're talking about managing our thinking,
mhm,
but if there's this kind of, underlying anxiety about something and we're just resisting it and saying, no, not going there, not going there. And there's an element of that's what we need to do. But if we're resisting it by the effort of not going there, it's giving it energy, it's staying
correct.
there. So we want to be able to kind of neutralize it by saying, okay, well, let's look at this. Let's shine the light on it. And sometimes even just naming it is a way of taming it.
Hmm.
And then, by saying, well, if it happens, I'll deal with it. And,
Hmm.
I've done hard stuff and I've
Hmm.
overcome challenging situations. We all
Hmm.
have. Any of you
Hmm.
listening here today, you've done hard things and you've
For sure.
overcome challenges. I mean, and I know that with absolute certainty because it's the ups and downs are part of the human experience.
For sure.
So we can do tough things, and inversion is just a way of kind of saying, okay, in that moment, what would be some of the things I can do to overcome that challenge?
Right. And like ultimately too, like if you really work it out, I think that the whole idea, right? The energy around it, the focus on it. Um, by doing that, you're just feeding it energy. You're just giving it more energy to essentially you're going to manifest that anyway because you've given it so much energy of I don't want that,
Yeah,
right? That whole energy around pushing it away and keeping it away, you're really just keeping it on the forefront of the mind, right?
feeding it still.
Right. You're just it's like the two wolves in your head. Which one are you feeding? Well, you're feeding the one you don't want to feed, right? You're feeding the wolf that's gonna create some chaos, right? But if you are able to um, tame, I love the word tame. That's a great word, actually. I love that. by just inverting your thoughts. Well, okay, well, let's just look at this for a minute. What does it really mean? And we ask, what does this situation really mean for me? Whatever that is. Like, what does this really mean? And what is the worst that could happen if it did happen? If it did show up and it happened in the way I've got it envisioned in my mind, truthfully, what's the worst thing that's going to happen here? And lots of times the consequence really is minimal.
Yeah.
And so by doing that, now we can have, so we've already taken that piece of it, you tame that energy, and then you can bring in your vision and you can bring that over. And now you can use that vision piece, the idea of, okay, where do I want to go with this, or my vision, where I'm at? And then you can just bring it together and say, okay, I'm now feel more solid in the fact that I can navigate this road from my vision with understanding that these could be possibilities that come up,
Yeah.
right? It kind of gives you that both sides of the coin a little bit where you can really push that forward.
Yeah. As you're talking, it's reminding me, and we hadn't thought of this in advance of doing the recording just now, but it's kind of like the purpose of simulators,
Mm,
the whether it's for people going into space or all sorts of scenarios where clinicians simulate what happens in the operating theater or whatever, and it's like in those moments, and the whole purpose of the simulation is to kind of figure out all the ways it could go wrong, and you can practice overcoming them. And is it Chris Hadfield is the name of the Canadian
yep.
astronaut?
Yep.
Yeah. And I think what he used to say was, like, you really wanted things to go wrong in the simulator, right? So
For
that you
sure.
could you could again preempt those challenges and find a solution for them while you're just in a simulator and you're
Mhm.
not up in space trying to figure out what tool did we need that's back at base.
Right. And you know what the thing is that we in policing, we do a lot of
Sure.
simulated training in policing.
Okay, that makes sense.
And right from recruit class, when you recruit class, you have scenario days, and they create these scenarios for you to go through so you can learn how to deal with those situations that kind of are more common, but they also are kind of off the wall a little bit, right? There's a few things there. And in all of our firearms training and stuff, we do a lot of simulated training in firearms, and it's shooting at a computer screen. It's not just live fire. We do, a lot of that stuff as well. And a lot of that is because it is that preparation for that unknown. It really is the worst case scenario, and they can build it in a simulator. And if you make a mistake, they just reset the simulator and you go again,
Yeah.
right? So you can
Yeah,
get that
and you build
repetition,
the
right?
muscle,
And you build the
right?
muscle, right? You build that training muscle, okay? Because you're not they always throw, and when they do the simulators, they never throw you the easy ones. They always throw you the hard ones, because that's the deal, right? To get you to the point where you can feel like okay, I've accomplished this new thing, and I made a whole bunch of mistakes over here, and nobody really got hurt. I didn't get hurt.
Yeah.
Nobody else got hurt, right? We were able to
Yeah.
figure out, okay, that's maybe that scenario will never ever happen, but at least now you've got a bit of a reference point if something similar to it does
Exactly.
happen. That kind of makes
Exactly.
sense. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think I love that word, a reference point. So again, the worst case scenarios are looking at, well, where did other businesses fail, or where did other relationships fail, or where did other people fail in their diet or their fitness program? And what would be a way through that either I can come up with myself, or I can study other people who've been successful,
Correct.
and just kind of have that reference point for myself if it arises in my own life.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
I think one kind of fun way that you can play with this, and this is a strategy from Bob Proctor.
Okay.
And he used to say, like, if you've got a real challenge going on, like again in any area of your life, and you just write it out on a like a postcard or whatever, and put it in the middle of the table, and then just go and stand in different areas of the room and look at it and read it upside down and sideways and back to front, and that it just opens up in the mind different ways of kind of looking at it, which open up different
Hmm.
possible solutions and ways forward. And again, I've had clients who've said to me, that just sounded a bit nuts, Maeve, but I tried it. And actually it did give me new thinking and
Right.
new insight and open up new possibilities. So again, for you listening here today, like if there's something that you're finding, challenging in some way, just, what can go wrong? Write it out and do your own experiment. I'm always
Sure.
saying with these ideas,
And I
try it
think
for yourself.
that's the whole point here. Like we're looking at ways to improve the life change transformation piece, right? We're looking to find ways to navigate all the stuff that we would love to implement into our lives. And then we're also wanting to attract, right? That stuff. We want to create that energy. We want to have that flow inside of our own lives. But once again, it's about the little tips that it's like lots of times you think that doesn't make any sense. I don't know how that would even work. But if you just leaned in a little bit, right, to those off the cuff moments, right, maybe it does unlock something for you. What have you got to
Yeah.
lose, right? What do you like really if you're really truly serious about changing your life, and I think everybody that would be tuning into this has a piece of that. They want it, they really are, they desire to change their lives,
Yeah.
right? Um, and I think that that's really interesting. And so just doing things a little bit differently, out of the box thinking is what comes to my mind,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like really is what this is. It's about expanding your awareness. It's expanding your thought. It's about implementing strategies that are not only growing, right? You're looking to increase your energy and stuff, but you're looking at ways to navigate the path. Because
Yeah.
I think, as with anyone, I know my story is very similar to many people, and I'm sure you're be no different. But like when I first started on this journey, and many years ago, to step into the pathway, that initial pathway that I was going down, the self improvement one, the one that was different than I was traveling, man, it was pretty dark and scary, and you had no idea what the road even looked like, right? And so that's a part of this too, right? Because it could be the most shaky moment, the scariest moment of your journey is the first few steps. So if this helps you, perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's just that willingness to, if you always, again, does this come from neuro linguistic programming? They say if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. So if we want to create new results and have different outcomes, we're going to have to do some new and different things. I mean, there's just no avoiding that. And some of the tools and strategies that we offer here are an opportunity to do an experiment in something new and different. And
Hmm.
again, we're doing it in service of the end result, in
Hmm.
service of the vision or the different kind of outcome.
Hmm.
Because there's going to be discomfort as part of it. It feels kind of silly looking at a piece of paper upside down on your table. I mean, it does. It feels a
Yeah.
bit silly. And there, again, that voice of dissuasion is going to be going, this is stupid. And,
Yeah.
why are you doing it? And what's the point? And what difference is it going to make? But when we do it anyway, when we just kind of, steady through that, that discomfort and disquiet in service of the end result, then those are breakthrough opportunities for
For
sure.
sure. Right. And this inversion piece, like when you think about just that whole idea around it, I think it's a really good tip. I think because once again, I do believe we can. I think we can come up with a lot of ways. I know I can sit here and think about my vision. And I got three or four that are right off the top of my head that I can tell you, right? Like could all go wrong. These three things could
Yeah.
go badly, right? And so being able now to realize that and go, "Oh, that's interesting. I never thought of it that way." And now I can change that perspective on it with, well, if it does happen, what's the worst case? You know, and for example, if I was speaking, I want to I do a bunch of speaking and stuff. And what if what if your schedule gets too busy and now you don't know what to do, can't decide which to go to. It's a big one, right? Well, for me, it's like, well, when you think about it, it's a moment of like, oh, but I'm like, is it that really a bad thing? Not really, right? And
Yeah,
then really, how bad is it? And well, I'll be able to navigate it. You thought about doing hard things. I got a calendar. I can use a calendar, and then right? I can say no to certain things. I don't have to say yes to everything, right? So all these ideas then pop into your head about how to to navigate that particular piece of whatever could be the worst in that moment. You feel like that's just overwhelming and crazy. I don't know how to deal with that. But really, when you look at it from this perspective, it's like, well, no, actually, I can navigate that quite simply by these few things,
Yeah.
right?
And I think what's kind of powerful there is that, like, by acknowledging that I'm worried about this or I'm afraid about this, it starts to set you on that path to, well, what could I do to fix it,
Hmm.
and straight away ideas come up,
Hmm.
well, I've got a calendar, I know how
Hmm.
to manage that, or I
Hmm.
can say no to some of
Hmm.
these things, or I could handle some of it. And, maybe if like for you, if you were doing a speaking tour, if you went in, round in a certain route, it might
For
make it
sure.
much easier rather than going over and back and
Correct.
sideways. There's ways to solve all of these things.
Right. And that is really like one of those things where it's like, we I guess in this short minute, like, 'cause we're doing this too, guys. We're traveling this journey ourselves as well. Like, we're not doing this perfectly. This is not something we do perfectly. We do it imperfectly perfect all the time. We're always learning. We're always growing. And so it's like we are as much on this journey as with you as you are on your own journey. And so this
Yes.
topic actually has been really poignant for me. I'm like, oh, I got a lot out of it today. So, so it
Yeah.
was great. Yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, I guess that's how we choose the topics most of the time.
it
It's
is.
it's stuff that we're kind of grappling with ourselves,
Hmm.
and realizing the power of in our own lives, so we know
Hmm.
to share it.
Right.
Yeah.
So as we kind of start to come to the end of this particular episode, what are the what are the things you want to leave people with? What are the let's say there's three or four things you want to leave. What would be the thoughts?
One of them, I do want to mention Marie Kondo, because I'd mentioned her
Hmm.
to you earlier, and you weren't familiar with her name, but she's Japanese, and she's kind of revolutionized the world of decluttering and tidying up, and I'm sure there are many others like her, but she's the name I know. And she talks about, instead of thinking about what am I going to get rid of, or repurpose, or whether it's to charity or the dump or wherever it's going to go, instead of thinking about it in terms of what am I giving away and releasing, to think about it in terms of what do I want to retain and what do I want to keep. And the question that she uses is, like, does it spark joy? And anything you're keeping, if it sparks joy, you want to keep it. But it's that kind of inversion. Instead of, what am I going to give away, it's what am I going to keep. And I think part of the inversion, is also when I'm worrying about something, what if it all goes wrong? Well, just flip it over. Like, what if it all goes great? What if I make it work and it's successful, and I'm proud of how I've shown up? And that capacity to just flip things on its head. There are, success and failure are two sides of the same coin,
Right.
so that willingness to just catch the thinking, like you mentioned, notice what you're noticing. Is this thinking serving me? And how could I flip it so that I could have a different experience?
Hmm. Hmm. For me, those are great. Actually, all really. I mean, I love a lot of that. Like that, the whole idea of what are you keeping instead of what are you throwing away. Um, the energy around that is just such a great contrast. Like, I mean, it's very easy to see. Like, I gotta throw stuff away. I gotta give other things away, and there's like kind of like this constriction there,
Exactly.
right? But this is like, well, no, actually, I'm gonna keep this. So I get as there's like it's a whole different play. I'm gonna keep this, and then you're not focusing on the things that are maybe constricted, but it's that expansive feeling. It's just such a great contrast, and you can just feel it right away in your body.
Yeah.
And we do that. My wife is amazing at a lot of things, and uh, keeping us decluttered is one of those things. And she often, is ex- expanding energy room for new things to come in, right? By getting rid of things that aren't no longer serving us or whatever, right? So that's really, really cool. That's a really cool thing. I just love the idea of the out of the box thinking too. I think out of the box thinking, just thinking like a little bit differently. What's something unique that I can do? I love the idea that uh, looking at your problem from a different perspective, just by putting it on paper and walking around the room. It's a great
Hmm.
tip. That's a really truthfully is a great tip. And just asking yourself the question. what's the actual worst thing that could happen here? Like I I, I can think of it, but what's truly like truthfully, what does this really mean for me? Because ultimately, I don't I know we all have moments of like feeling like a failure. Like we have things that we don't hit certain goals or we feel like that, well, I failed in this. And there's a cliche saying, right? Well, it's not failure, you're just learning something, right? There's no failure. It's what did I learn and how did I succeed, right? And I believe that there is a lot of learning there when you can create the awareness around a pathway and then being able to navigate the bumps because you've set yourself up for success because the bumps are going to come,
Yeah.
right? The
Yeah.
bumps are going to come.
Exactly. And I think, when we ask ourselves what's the worst thing that can happen, sometimes that can feel kind of scary, but to be able to say to ourselves that, my God and I have got this. And
Mhm.
and we might all relate to what a God is differently, or, the universe and I, or spirit and I, or yeah, love and I have got this. We're never on our own. You and I, we talk often about how we're spiritual beings having a human experience.
Yeah.
And it's the human side of us feels small in comparison with the problem
Hmm.
or the challenge, or the worst case scenario. But when we call in that, there's a spark of the divine in me, and I've got this. And my God and I can handle it no matter what it is.
Right.
So really, really reminding ourselves, and you listening today, that like you're never on your own, and infinite intelligence is always there for us. We just have to remember to call it in,
For
right?
sure. Yeah, for sure. So, guys, thank you so much for tuning in again. We appreciate you once again. Being top 10 in Ireland is such a cool thing. And so, much thanks go out to you guys. Please continue to share us. Please continue to connect with us. Of course, we're on social media at Maeve Langford for all of her handles on all of the social media stuff. She's doing some great work in Ireland. She's paving the way. She's really truthfully blazing that self improvement trail in Ireland. She's got some great blogs as well as she's got this on the go and some events and stuff like that. She's check her out if you're in that area, or if not, she does virtual stuff, I think, as well, maybe as on her website. And as for me, like I say, thank you very much. My book's on Amazon, Call for Service. It's, if you can tune in and read that, pick that up, that would be amazing. I would appreciate that as well. So, anyways, thank you guys. You can connect with me at Frontline Resiliency Project on the social media. So we will see you again in a couple of weeks. Thanks for tuning in and making this a great podcast, as well as being top 10 on it, which once again, I got to say, which is so cool. So thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. Have a good one. See you next.
Have a good summer. Bye for now.